Hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about the question that I've probably been asked the most when it comes to Nord keyboards. How do you pad? Now when I say pad, I want to distinguish it from, for instance, playing organ for talk music or a hymn on piano for communion. What we're talking about today is specifically a synth pad, which sounds like this. This is a pad that can be sustained for long periods of time with very slow chord changes. And today we'll learn about 4 different ways that you can pad on the Nord Stage keyboards. Let's dive in. Before we start, I encourage you to download the sounds we'll be using in the description below. You can find them for the Nord Stage 2, 3, and 4. For all of these sounds, the pad is controlled by a filter, which takes it from not being heard at all and adds in the warmth. And the more you turn it up, a little more clarity and brightness. And all of that is controlled by the stone wheel on the left side of the keyboard. This first method of playing a pad is actually quite basic. You don't even necessarily have to be a piano player to figure it out. Today we're going to stay in the key of C major, so all the keys will be white keys, and it will be very simple to understand what we're doing. For this first method, we'll be using the dark piano pad patch. It has a very soft, warm piano sound with a pad that is controlled from the stone wheel. To play this method, your right hand will play a fifth in the key that you're in this case, C major, 1, and 5. You'll continue to hold those 2 notes while the left hand moves through bass notes. Let's turn the pad up. We can sustain that fifth for as long as we need to, and if we want, we can add in the left hand on single bass notes. That's it. There's the first method. It's very simple. You can take that same concept and apply it to any of the 12 major keys, and it will work the same way. Now let's move on to our second method, the Latch Pad. For this method, we're going to be using the prayer pad patch. In this patch, the pad is only programmed to the top area of the keyboard, everything above the green LED. Here, we can play a fifth or other notes again. Turn the pad filter up. Now we can release the notes, and they will continue to sustain until we play different notes in the pad section or change the patch. From here, we can let the pad sustain for any amount of time, and when we're ready, we can layer in the piano sound that can be played below the green LED. For this third method, we're starting to get a little bit more involved. And I want to set us up with a little bit of pad etiquette before we get into it. We're going to go back to the dark piano pad patch that we used before. But this time, we're going to be moving our chords around with the piano and the pad layered together in some more intricate ways. Now, when we do that, we have to really be listening to how muddy the sound is getting when we have a very long release to a pad and a lot of reverb added to the piano. It can get very muddy if we're not careful, and we have to adjust our sustain pedal use accordingly. Let me play a short movement just using the piano, but I'm going to hold down the sustain pedal for the entire time. Not too bad, a little bit of light dissonance in the resonance there, but it's quite pretty. Now let's turn up the pad and do the exact same thing, holding the sustain pedal the entire time. Horrible, right? So this is a very different approach we need to have when we're playing pad versus when you're playing piano, even when you're playing very long, drawn out chords, because the pad sustains for forever. So all of those notes will continue to meld together. And we have to be a little bit more cognizant of when we're releasing that pedal, how we're releasing it, in order to keep the sound from being choppy, but also not getting muddy with all the notes combined. Here's how it should sound when we're properly releasing the sustain pedal between chord changes. Now let's get into this method. And this is something I realized over thousands of hours of playing pads. And it actually has a lot to do with how our ears and our brains prioritize sound. Basically, when we hear a chord, we prioritize the highest sounding note. That note is usually left to lead lines or vocal melodies, and our brains really prioritize what sounds the highest above all the other notes in a chord. Now we can really use this when we're padding to give the sense that something is really sustained and held through all the chords, and they don't feel quite as blocky as we're moving through them. Let me give an example. Let's play a simple chord pattern, but every chord will shift and move most of the notes. Turn up the pad. That sounded nice. We can actually do something to make it a little more cohesive to our ears. Let's take that highest note that we started with, the C, and let's keep that held through all of those chord changes and see what it does to the sound. With this method of prioritizing the top note of a chord, and for this we can use the root, we can use nines, we can use fifths, experiment with many different intervals, we can create a very cohesive sound between all the notes, and when you combine it with really proper sustain pedal use, you keep the sound from getting too muddy or feeling too choppy. Let me give one more example with a fifth, which in the key of C is a G, For our last method, we're actually going to use an external device. And it's this big blue box right here. You've probably been staring at it. This is a reverb pedal, and this specific one is called the Mercury X. You can use many different reverb pedals. I prefer them to be stereo when you're working with keyboards because stereo really does matter. But we're going to use this to add even a little bit more dimension and really long release to the sounds and see what that does. Now this is again something you have to have or have to use. If you don't have one, that's okay. But if you do have access to one or willing to get one and you want to hear some of the nuances that you can add to the sound, let's take a look at that right now. That really does just scratch the surface with what you can do when you're padding. I really encourage you, if you're new to using a pad, start really simple. Start with method 1, even if you're an advanced piano player. It's really important to get the concept of how the long sustained sound of a pad really affects our use of the sustain pedal and the way that we play chords. Get used to using the pad with that first method and then experiment with the others. And I really hope that's helpful for you to be able to get very comfortable using a pad, using the filter. And with this, I hope you bless the worship teams you serve with and the congregation. And if you have any questions for me, or would like to see me make more videos about the Nord Stage, keyboards, or other synthesizers, please comment in the section below. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.